They're going into these programs, taking all the information, removing security clearances, changing passwords, and then they're leaving it open for Russia and China to come in afterwards and steal our information. That is like the biggest thing. President Trump is giving your information to China and Russia.
If I went over every single thing, it would take hours. But it's just been more and more like terrifying as we fall farther and farther from like what our country is supposed to be. And also just I'm terrified of the rise of fascism in this country. It's terrifying, and I would like to stop that, or at least contribute and say my piece, because I wouldn't be able to stand by and say nothing. I wouldn't live with myself that way. I just can't.
Okay, I'm gonna just talk and assume that this mic is working. I had the opportunity to go to a protest in Delaware, Ohio with the Hands Off movement. And it was really interesting for me because it showed that there are a ton of different people in these protests and opposing the current administration's actions. And there's a ton of different reasons why. I saw younger people who were a lot more pessimistic about the effects of the protests and what they could be doing, but I also saw a lot of people who were a little bit older, who had a little bit more connection to the institutions that we have, and they seemed to believe that these protests would have a difference, or that they can still make a difference. These protests are, again, in Delaware, Ohio, so it's a small town, and they had been managing to slowly over the last few weeks now carry more and more numbers to the protests that they're getting. I think they started off a few weeks ago with 20 people protesting with signs outside one of the statues in town, and now, they're getting up to probably 100, 200 people. And I think on April 5th, with the big countrywide protest, there was probably like 800 people there. That's what a lot of people were saying. This is something that has a lot of different faces, has a lot of different ways of talking and dressing and acting. This is a movement that is old, that's young, and that is still very much developing. So I am really excited for y'all to see some of these interviews.
Okay.
All right. Is that recording? Okay. You mind if I ask what your name is?
Chandler like friends.
Chandler.
Like friends.
Oh, Chandler like friends. Okay. Chandler, what made you want to go to the protest today?
In all reality, like we've already had a coup. It's happened. You don't deny court orders, and you don't gut power from Congress by trying to destroy departments that you have no authority to get rid of, that Congress does. And people don't realize, like, you go into work and they don't know what's going on. They don't care to know. They don't watch the news. They don't pay attention, and they get all their news from TikTok. And so for me, it's like a coalescence of like 100 issues of why I'm here today. But like people don't know, like we are in the middle of an authoritarian regime.
Have you gone to a lot of protests in the past?
This is actually my first.
Have you talked to a lot of people who have gone to protests or have been out and protesting?
Yes.
Do you think that they've seen a lot of change as a result of the action that they took?
Not always, but it's a way to get started, because once you get noticed, it brings those issues forward.
And I just got one more question for you. So what is something that you wish everybody knew more about that isn't getting enough coverage right now?
Well, for one thing, I would like everybody to do research on Donald Trump. If that had been done the first go around, instead of just believing whatever junk came out of his mouth, you would be able to see what his history is. It's not good. He's not really a businessman.
That's true.
He's a personality.
That's true. And when you think of Donald Trump, what do you think of the people just, it goes over their heads?
I think they're single issue voters. I think that they either want to protect their money, or they feel like they don't have jobs anymore. If you look at Lordstown, Ohio, every single president has promised those people jobs, and it's never happened. And this is why people keep voting for him. We've got to do better on that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for doing this interview.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate what y'all are doing here.
Sure, thank you. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
You too.
I'm one of the people that helped organize this. We're part of Indivisible. There's a lot of people that are helping like set all this up, and it's been great. It's gotten so big, it's insane.
And how have you seen the growth be just in a few weeks? Has there been anything that's contributed to that? Has there been a lot more energy coming in the past few weeks?
Yes, when we first started off like a few weeks ago, there was like maybe like 20, 30 people, and then now we've been consistent. Like the last 2 weeks we've had almost like 100 people at minimum. It's been insane. And the big protest that we had, that was, I believe it was on, like, it was April 5th. We had that big protest. There were almost 700 people, and ever since, like, we told people like every Saturday noon to 1, and then they've been showing up, and it's been great.
That is really good to hear. Yeah, I remember going by on April 5th and seeing all the crowds. Do you think that there's anything specifically that contributed to that big wave of people?
I think a lot of people realize that they're not necessarily alone, because we live in, like, we're in Ohio, and there's a lot of like there's a lot of people that might be afraid to actually like come forward and actually feel like they can actually speak out against what's going on. And some people just, it's when you see other people taking that first step, then you see more and more people. We've been reaching more people. We've been trying to like get people in the community. Like we have a Facebook group and people join it. And we've just been spreading the word by mouth and also by people driving past. There's so many people that say that they want to come, but they're usually like working on Saturdays, so they can't, but they try to support when they can, and it's great.
Do you feel that, being here, being with these protests, kind of building the type of community here, do you think that it's making any difference, or do you think it has the potential to make any differences?
So I work. I ran for office myself. I ran for city council here in Delaware. Narrowly lost by less than 500 votes. I've worked for candidates since I was 13 years old. I'm 22 now, and so protests have always been a thing where I'm kind of a little pessimistic, and I'm going to be honest about that, because you can come out here and show your face and everything, and I don't wear the mask. I don't blur my face because, like I had said to you, if you're not willing to like be out there for your country now and for democracy and for people like Garcia that was deported, like, what are you doing now? So I think protests have the ability, because if you look at like the civil rights movement, the gay liberation movement, like protests did get us to that point. But right now, unless everybody's doing their part, it's not going to do much. I mean, Democrats in Congress have no power. There's very few things we do have leverage on, and when we do have leverage, Chuck Schumer tanks it. So for me, it's like, I am here because it's physically the only thing I can do, but the most effective thing we could do, I can't say on camera.
What made you want to come out and protest today?
I want the federal government to know they need to leave us alone, leave our benefits, and I want to save our democracy.
How do you feel about being out here and being with this group today? Does it change your mind? Do you feel any hope for any change or anything like that?
I actually was feeling extremely down and discouraged and sure that we had just had our last election, but these protests bring me some hope that I am not the only person that sees what a complete cluster this is.
With that, everyone doing their part, with the protests doing a little bit but not enough, do you think that people really understand the implications of what's going on? And if they did, do you think they'd be more willing to take action to prevent it?
I think if people realized what was going on, we would have had a President Kamala Harris right now. And I think it's an interesting question, because people just aren't paying attention, and people don't understand. And with the age of like technology, like I'm 22, so I came of age when my parents had flip phones, and now everyone has an iPhone, everyone has something. And there are so many sources you can get information from that are conflicting or just blatantly not true. Like, people are citing that this guy that was deported is an MS-13 member. There's no proof. He's actually been proven not to be a member. So I just don't think people like care to know, because there's this poem, and I'm paraphrasing it. I don't know it by quote, but it's, they came after the Jews, and I said nothing because I wasn't Jewish. They came after women, I didn't say anything because I wasn't a woman. They came after Catholics, I didn't say anything, I wasn't Catholic. When they came after me, there was no one to defend me. And that's like where we're at now. And so, as a gay person who is who's married, and if Obergefell v. Hodges overturns, my marriage in the state of Ohio due to 2004 statute will immediately be annulled. So it's coming for me already. My brother is trans. They're coming for him right now. People don't realize until it's going to be them. They always move the goalpost. So they start with illegal aliens, which, how are you calling a person illegal? Sick beyond me. But they start with illegal aliens. Then they're moving to homegrowns. Then it's going to be, oh, okay, how about Jews? How about gays? How about trans people? It never stops. They just move the goal.
I think everything is being covered, but not extensively enough just because there's so much. But I think people, especially older people, we fought for a lot of these rights, especially the women. And now I'm looking at my granddaughters not having the rights that I fought for and won. And I think people need to understand, especially the younger people, that their future is at stake.
One thing I noticed with the hands off movement protests is that a lot of them seem to be um, older people. There were not many younger people at these protests, and I think that'll change over the summer, with a lot more people having free time to go and protest or do whatever they think is making a difference. But I think right now it's a little bit concerning, just because a lot of the political change that comes in these transitional periods come from young people getting out there and getting active. There were centrists there who did not like leftists. There were people who I picked up to be more leftist leaning who don't think centrist ways of political action work. It was a very interesting cornucopia of political beliefs and personal beliefs. I would advise that anybody who's interested in learning more about these movements, who wants to get active and get involved, I would say that you should start off by following the 5051 movement on Instagram or going to their website. I'll link it in my description. They have a link tree where you can organize in any city that you're in and you can see any protests that are going on and you can really get involved with your community. I know the PSL has also been doing a lot of protests with the hands off movement, or at least on the same dates as the hands off movement. But with the changes that are happening right now, it is extremely important to show your voice. This is a president who last administration, who in his last term, if he had the opportunity, would have been able to do a lot of harm. He had a lot of roadblocks with his advisors and with his cabinet and with his heads of defense, for instance. Like during the BLM protests in 2020, Donald Trump quite literally commanded Mark Milley, or no, I think it was Attorney Barr at the time, but he was commanding his generals to shoot protesters in the legs. He was kidnapping protesters at BLM protests into vans without any markings on them, and we're seeing echoes of that now with the way that they are treating a lot of undocumented people and documented people. Where just recently they had kidnapped a boy in Florida, and the judge was saying that there was nothing they could do because even though there was a valid birth certificate, it was not his authority to determine. So there are clear overreaches of power right now, and there is a cabinet for the Trump administration in which they will not stop him. They will empower any authoritarian actions that he would be willing to take. And this is not necessarily a way to show that you're on team liberal or you're on team Democrat or you're on team blue or whatever the this is a way of showing there are limits to what the president can do. So, again, this is a movement made up of every type of person. There are centrists, old Republicans, liberals, leftists. There is quite literally every person you could think of. This is a political cornucopia of beliefs. This has quite literally every type of person in it. It's important for you to go. It's important for, especially if you're young, to at least go to one of these things and just see what it's all about. Um, yeah.